But I'm just ridiculous sometimes, y'all. Like, it was just last month. I couldn't even sleep for like 3 days, not because of anything bad per se, but I was just too damn excited about my projects and my artwork and like the connections that I was making with people, and I just couldn't fall asleep. Like, I was that excited. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is River. I also go by Riv a lot of the time, and I like to draw little creatures and cartoons and all sorts of weird, creepy, but also sometimes cute things. So I have a huge backlog of sketchbooks that I've never really been able to share like efficiently with very many people in my life. But I found that making these kinds of videos on YouTube are actually super great to do this without feeling myself getting overwhelmed with, the whole process of like taking a million pictures of everything. I think I'm also able to, like recontextualize and reevaluate what was going on in my life through these sketchbooks and maybe gain a little more understanding towards myself and how my art skills were developing, and just think about what I was feeling passionate or frustrated about in those moments of time. And that is what I want to speak on in this video. That's just it, right? It's time. It will be the end of December 2024 when I upload this, and it's always around this time of year that I think we all reflect on the past year and analyze what we've accomplished, and then we're also going to be thinking about all the other things we would like to do in the following year. I did have some personal goals with my artwork, and it's funny because I randomly found a little note in the back of my notebook at work where I had written it down, and I had completely forgotten about it until I saw it. So my goals weren't even super specific, though. I mean, I'm sure it can be helpful to have that at times. But in general, I just wanted to, 1, begin publishing a comic series online, 2, launch my Etsy shop, 3, start making YouTube videos again, and 4, continue streaming myself, basically doing all these things on Twitch. And I'm gonna straight up just say it, I did not launch the comic project I had been sitting on, but I did accomplish the other 3 things, even though I wasn't like quote unquote perfect with them. I opened my Etsy shop earlier this past year with literally like 2 or 3 sticker designs just so I could get a feel for how the whole process works. I would like to put up some other designs in there pretty soon because it is super fun. It just costs a little to have things made, but it's really not too much. So yeah, that was still a project that I saw through, and I was pretty proud of myself for that. I also kind of got back into making little TikToks showcasing my artwork and process, and I've been able to cross-post those things as reels and shorts. And I also took a hand building ceramics class, and I started going to figure drawing sessions with a group and my sister. So those are some other experiences that have helped me, I guess, expand my artistic skills and just be part of the local art community. But for a lot of the year, I was just focused on being like the bare minimum human that was working to survive in society, I guess, which sounds really boring, I know, but it has to be done, right? But yeah, I think about all the art and projects I worked on this year, and I still can't help but think, was it really just that much? Was this all I made this past year? Do I ever actually finish my projects? Do I just like to dream about doing these things instead of being disciplined enough to actually do them? And how do I measure if what I did was enough? We already know that it's not about the actual amount of works, because some things you can just sit and work on for like forever, and then other things just in their nature need more time. For example, I think I mentioned this in my last video, but I'd taken that ceramics class, and time just flies away when you're working with clay. There's also a lot of cleanup involved, and there's stages of drying, firing, glazing, and firing again, and your pieces have to go through all that stuff, and it just requires days worth of time. But yeah, I think myself and a lot of people, we still wanted to have at least made some artwork this year, regardless of the medium. Some pieces take longer, and sometimes we may not even have an actual finished quote unquote product from an art practice. An example that I'm thinking of specifically would be what I've seen my sister do during our figure drawing sessions. She will do a lot of like gestural sketches to warm up, and then she may smudge and lightly erase each sketch to build up a ground, and then continue to do another drawing off of that. And oftentimes we are maybe not too happy with the final drawing anyway, but I know it's given us experience, so next time we do the figure drawing, we may come a little closer to achieving what we were looking for. But again, not freaking always. For me, it will be like at the most random time that I actually do a pretty cool thing right off the bat, or I just hit a sort of like flow state with my art. And maybe this all just comes from comparison of what I see online and what kind of assumptions I have that an artist should be doing and making, and if I'm even living up to those expectations. I try to reframe my thoughts when I'm looking at others and their success, like instead of it coming from a place of comparison or I don't know, like jealousy or whatever, it can be in the form of inspiration. I also think there's a sort of societal pressure that we face as artists. I feel maybe I need to prove something to like my family and friends, to my followers and audience. And I don't know, even like strangers sometimes that I can do this. I can make my art, even though a lot of my time and energy is taken up by jobs that sometimes don't really have anything to do with my true passion. But what's important, I think, is that I can support myself and essentially like fund my own creative practice in my time outside of work. It's just finding ways to stay structured and organized about it that I think I struggle with a lot. As I mentioned, I stream on Twitch somewhat consistently. At least I have always returned to it time after time, even when I've taken breaks. But I'm gonna be real, some days I just show up and I have my canvas open on Clip Studio Paint, and it's basically just a hangout sesh, especially after a full day of work and my brain is feeling like a little bowl of oatmeal or something. I don't think you have to always go like 110% at every art session, since it's also just about building that habit of carving out the time, committing to the time, sitting down and working on what you can. Like, it's more about showing up for yourself and not really your audience or followers at all. It sounds kind of harsh, but they'll always find ways to fill their time. It's really about you. You need to give yourself that security that you will have time and a calm, stable space to do your work. I don't know if this kind of little tip would help anyone either, but I also do this thing where I keep a little digital post-it note on my desktop and also on my phone, and I update it continuously with new little tasks that lead me to completing bigger projects. And oftentimes there are a few projects on there. Some are illustrations, some are YouTube videos with the tasks all broken down to like write script, record footage, and just finish up editing. And other things may be small ideas and prompts for stuff like TikToks and shorts and whatnot. I'm able to navigate back to these notes when I feel uncertain, and if I just need to reorient myself a little bit so that I can at least complete some sort of task and, I don't know, get like, I guess, a little dopamine hit in my brain since I'm moving closer to my goals. But again, it's not some daunting, overwhelming project either. But I'm just ridiculous sometimes, y'all. Like, it was just last month, I couldn't even sleep for like 3 days, not because of anything bad per se, but I was just too damn excited about my projects and my artwork and like the connections that I was making with people, and I just couldn't fall asleep. Like, I was that excited. But I think this is just how I show up to things I really care about in my life. Like, I can't just be chill and aloof or whatever. It's just me being my most genuine self. And sometimes I do and say really weird stuff, and I feel very intensely about certain things. And I want to stop feeling bad or embarrassed about it. Although I do think I need to like calm down a little, because I just like to get some better sleep too. Another thing that I try to keep in mind is that experiencing and just living your life is important for your art practice as well. Or else, I guess, like, what are you even gonna make art about? Yeah, we often make art to cope or as emotional outlet or for like some sort of social commentary or whatever, but we really have needs that need to be met first. We have to feel secure in some way. So I do think about what I'm looking at, who I'm spending time with, who I'm helping, how I'm making others and myself feel happy and at peace and enjoying life in a healthy way so that I can turn around and channel my energy and thoughts into answering the call to make art. So that leads me to reflect on the things I did in my personal life this past year that I think I can feel pretty accomplished about. I talked to a therapist for the first time since 2021 to help myself deal with some struggles that had already affected my physical health, but at the time I hadn't really fully realized it when it was at its peak, which is also very scary, but I think I wised up a little. And if I'm being honest, I do still struggle, maybe not as much. I also fully moved to a new apartment space, which has been quite an experience as well. I continue to show up and work at my previous job as a part-time employee, even on the days where I really would have rather been a little lazy. I try to stand up for myself to friends sometimes, and then even to myself at other times. I try to use discernment and took breaks from people and from activities, even when I didn't really want to because I was afraid maybe I would upset someone or been missing out on something. I was more mindful about my time on social media, and I've purposely tried to just use it as a tool to share my artwork and check in with my artist friends and inspirations and maybe other friends, but to just leave it there at that. I had to be like more real with myself when someone basically crossed a boundary, and if I just didn't like it, then that was okay. And from there, I could decide if I wanted to ignore it or confront them about it. I actually had an instance just a few days ago where an old friend reached out to me for help, and I did help them by sending them money, and it turns out they had actually lied to me. And I started to figure it out, and they continued to lie. And then they finally came clean about it, at least, I think so. I could still just not know the whole story, of course, because, well, what can you believe when someone lies in the first place? And this was sort of hard to learn. I think I'm still learning the lesson here too. And it really put me in such a mood, like right before Christmas and everything. But also just tried to do what was right as a friend. And in the best situation, it's like, yeah, get paid back. But from here, I can just figure out if I even can or want to rebuild trust with this friend again. But anyway, aside from that, I think I let myself try new things and go to new places, and even if it felt a little uncomfortable, then that was okay too. I would say I let myself feel emotions more fully this past year, the good and the bad ones, than I think I did compared to the year before, in which I sort of had this shield between myself and the things that bothered me. But the shield and method of coping was actually hurting me, like psychologically and physically, so I had to let that go too. And that is probably one of the scariest things I've ever done. I definitely felt a lot of fear, but I think I was also able to come back to being more of myself this past year. And there's really no way I'm going to possibly be able to capture exactly what I want to say here. I want to be a little careful in what I say, and in a lot of ways my writing is pretty limited. I'm not really following any kind of structure. And as cheesy as it sounds, my heart and head are just trying to sync up and maybe string together some sort of coherent thought, because for whatever, I feel compelled to say this, even though no one has ever really actually asked for it. I kind of think maybe I am just a huge freaking egomaniac after all. Like, I'm always just thinking about this kind of thing and how I'm being perceived and if I'm being understood by those around me. I am a pretty introverted person, and oftentimes I get nervous talking to other people, but online I feel like I have this space where I can be uninterrupted and really put my thoughts out there, even when I feel like it may not be the most groundbreaking thing ever. I'm not really able to offer you like some great advice about being an artist, but I find a lot of value in the things I talk about with other artists, my friends, my family, followers, and viewers. So I try to harness that and push it even further and just share that with other people who are maybe not able to be present in those moments. So hopefully maybe some things are relatable in some ways. Maybe it could spark further ideas and conversations. So I invite you, if you would like to share what kind of things you faced this year, what your triumphs were, what are your plans for the upcoming year, how did you come up with your plans? Do you even have plans? It's okay if not. I'm not sure I have anything concrete myself right now. How do you feel looking back on and reflecting on the past year? How do you feel about the upcoming year? I think I've talked for quite a while now, so if you listened to me and looked at my artwork, not even just in this video, but also in general over the past year and the past years before that, well, I'm actually quite astonished and grateful, so thank you, and hopefully I will be staying in touch with you guys into the next year. Until next time, bye.